Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Lano from the Snap coming at you with some Week 14 rankings. Mac and I are going to discuss some waiver ads to help you get in those fantasy playoffs. This is a must-win game for a lot of you out there, so hopefully you can watch this after the fact. If you do have some questions, get me in the comments. Some tough starts to decisions. We answer every single question. So this is a must-win week. Mac, we are joined here. You're not on camera, but you're still here with me. How are you doing, my friend?
I am I'm okay.
You've had better days.
I've had better days. It's a lot of frustration on my end right now. When technology doesn't cooperate, it doesn't make life well. But I will take full blame for the delay in programming and the lack of entertainment. You guys just have to stare at Landon for as long as possible tonight. But hopefully you guys can hear me.
Just
Um,
listening to you. Hopefully y'all can hear Mac just fine. You just see my face the entire time.
if audio is out, I'm about as useful as Deshaun Watson this week.
And what a great way to intro. I did a what to do with Deshaun Watson video that we released this morning, and he is such a high risk player. I still do think he's a high reward player if things go right. I was looking at his 2020 stats, Mac, and they are really, really good, throwing for 350 yards, multiple touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't due to his legs, like maybe my memory would have maybe thought or manufactured. Guy could huck the ball, but he looked really, really bad throwing it in the dirt.
He looked
Um,
like a guy who hadn't played football in about 2 years.
exactly.
Yeah.
So my advice to most people watching right now, he's not currently in my top 12 quarterbacks, and we'll discuss those a little bit later. But if you do need a player, if a Mike White type isn't going to do it for you,
Mm-hmm.
Mike White is a very tough matchup this week against Buffalo. If 2 touchdowns isn't going to do it, and you need that 30-point performance, I think that Deshaun Watson still has that in his range of outcomes. But he could also put what he just did up. Like he could put 6 points. If 6 to 15 points isn't going to do it, then you just go with Watson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm willing to give him another go. And I think with him, it was a little bit of him coming back and maybe not being ready for the moment, or maybe the game plan was like, let's try to use or rely on you as little as possible. Let's try to get the ball into our running backs' hands and keep the game plan simple. But really, it was the Cleveland defense that did all of the work.
It did. They single-handedly won me a matchup, multiple
Same.
matchups actually. Uh,
31 points in the league I started them in. Outrageous.
Outrageous. Hopefully, y'all pick them up this week. Pretty soon, as the fantasy playoffs start, I'll be doing rankings videos every week. So I'll be doing a segment on just quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, and then defenses as well, because those defenses, as we just mentioned, can be very important, and you can stream them week in and week out.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert: the Dallas Cowboys play the Houston Texans. They are the number one defense of the week. But Mac, how are you doing in your leagues? Does this week matter for any of your teams, or have you secured a bye, or are you rebuilding if you're in Dynasty right now?
I'm rebuilding in one of my dynasty leagues. The other 3 dynasty leagues, I have locked up a playoff spot. I'm trying to clinch a bye in one of them, and then a couple redraft leagues. I'm fighting for a playoff spot in one, and I've secured bye in 2 others. So it's been a good year. I don't think I'm gonna miss the playoffs in any league, but the one I'm rebuilding in, which is expected. But yeah, it looks like it's gonna be a good, fun week to grind it out. I lost some players though this week. I'm down Lamar Jackson. I'm down Ken Walker. Um,
Yeah.
there was one other player I can't remember.
We're down Cortland Sutton in our hearts,
Yeah,
whether or not he
I lost him a
plays.
long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
seriously. But this week is one of those weeks, Mac, that you just hope that your starters stay healthy. Like
yeah,
you
no, for
hope that
sure.
they last until the playoffs, because the worst thing possible is to lose a Travis Kelce on a meaningless game for our fantasy teams. You know what I'm saying?
You want to talk about meaningless games? I don't understand what the Cowboys are doing up 21 points. They're up 40-19 with 6 to play in the fourth quarter, and they still have their first, line out there. They got their first team. Like, I just don't understand what happens when Zeke, trying to punch in that touchdown to go up 47-19, tears his ACL.
Right.
Who does Mike McCarthy have to answer to now? What happens if Tony Pollard injures himself? CeeDee Lamb goes down. Like, what is literally the point?
There's a lot of that, and we had some big injuries. I mean, Lamar Jackson, like you mentioned, Jimmy Garoppolo, banged up and hurt. It was a kind of a rough week for quarterbacks.
Terrible
So,
week.
pardon?
Terrible week.
Yeah. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the must-add waiver wire guys that you might be listening to this now and going through your waivers, or should we be talking about our rankings for week 14? Where do you want to start, Mac?
No, I think we should get to the rankings. I think anybody who's coming in here, we'll answer those waiver questions live. If you guys have any waivers or some trades, if your deadline is still not passed, like, feel free to pop those into the chat. But let's just get it down to the ranking debate between notable players that you have some maybe opinions or some decisions that you had to make between.
Sure.
Let's get into that.
So I would say top 5 or 6 quarterbacks is where we'll start. Is pretty chalky. Josh Allen versus the Jets, Patrick Mahomes at Denver, Jalen Hurts at the New York Giants, Joe Burrow versus Cleveland, I think is a really, really good one. Same with Justin Herbert versus Miami,
Sure.
Dak Prescott versus Houston. You know what? Agreed. You're going to start all those guys, no question.
Yep.
Tua had an ankle. He did not have a good game.
Correct.
He played the Chargers. Jared Goff, I think, is a really good add and start against Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've got Geno Smith at Carolina, Kirk Cousins at Detroit, Kyler Murray versus New England, tough matchup, and Derek Carr at the Rams. Do any of those, who did I miss? Who do you believe deserves to be out of that? Who did I get too high, too low, Mac? I sent you the rankings in our WhatsApp group if you want to check that out, if you're not in there already.
Got him.
Where do you think I went wrong? Where do you think I'm too high or too low on these players?
No, I definitely like the rankings. I think people are going to wonder, should I run it back with Deshaun Watson?
Right.
They play Cincinnati this week on the road. Nice interdivisional matchup. Would you be willing to give another go with Deshaun Watson, for example? Or, would you want to go with Tom Brady, who's been terrible at San Francisco?
Yeah, that's actually the good question. Tom Brady, I think, should be a sit in most leagues. I would start Deshaun Watson over Tom Brady, I think, because Tom Brady just doesn't give you any upside. He was basically batting a 0 for most of that game on Monday night until those late 2 touchdowns that he scored.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, absolutely, I would go Deshaun Watson because Cincinnati's going to force the Browns to throw the football and push the ball downfield. I don't think that's what I like about this game in particular, is that it should be a high scoring game from Cincinnati because the Browns defense can't stop Joe Burrow and company. So I do really like Deshaun Watson here. Would you start him over any of my top 12? Would you start him over Derek Carr or Kyler Murray? Carr has a really good matchup, and Kyler Murray is still a rushing threat.
I think I'm willing to start Tom Brady if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, you like Tom Brady. All right. Now
I do. I think what I saw from Deshaun was just not what I was expecting. Like, look, albeit the game plan might have been, use Nick Chubb, use Kareem Hunt, let the defense win the game. No problem. Only completed 12 of 22 passes. Looked horrible. Like you talk about passing the eye test, definitely didn't do it. Had a careless interception. Wasn't overly mobile on the ground. 7 for 21. Was the 30th best quarterback. Like, I'm not saying that Tom Brady was fantastic either, but he showed on that when they were down 17, was it 16? Yeah, 16-3, I think.
Yeah.
When they were down 16-3 entering the fourth quarter, I shut the game off. I said, it's over. And then I got a notification on my phone. they had scored. And then I got another notification on my phone that Chris Godwin had scored the game-tying touchdown, which ended up getting overturned
Yeah,
because of a penalty. But I tuned back in. I watched the game back, and I'm just like, oh, there's Tom Brady. There's the guy that I know can step in, get a game done. He threw the ball 54
I
times.
know. Yeah,
He wasn't overly efficient. He still missed a lot of guys downfield. He was the QB9, all because of the fourth quarter, but he had 54 attempts. I want the volume. I'm going to take Tom Brady over Deshaun Watson because I know at the end of the day, one of those guys is getting it done for me, and it's not the guy that's been off for the last 2 years.
yeah. The shocking thing about that was when I was doing the Mike Evans video last week or last night. I mean, only 4 targets for Mike Evans. Fit with 54
4 for 4.
attempts. Yeah, 4 for 4. You are correct. And had that long pass interference call uh, to, I guess, force one of those touchdowns. But yeah, it was a tough week for Mike Evans. We'll be talking about him a little bit in our rankings debate as well. But I like that, Mac. I think you make some strong points. The only thing I'm worried about is that San Francisco defense.
I
We
know.
know that Tom Brady is not good under pressure, and they have one of the best front fours in the league. So, not to say it's hard to doubt Tom, but it's gonna be a rough time against San Francisco.
The game script could definitely be better for the Cleveland Cincinnati game. You'd hope
Mhm.
Cincinnati would get up and
Yeah,
Cleveland would be forced to throw the ball. I'd love to see that.
yeah.
Is
It's
it
hard.
going to yield a good game from
It
Deshaun? I
it's
don't.
hard to it's hard to have confidence in Deshaun
Yeah,
after watching that game
agreed.
with your eyes. Like, you're just really projecting him to do something that he didn't do on
hmm
Sunday.
hmm
So, let's move over to tight ends. And tight
Oh,
ends,
okay.
one of those difficult positions that if you have one, you're probably just gonna start them.
hmm
But this week I've got Travis Kelce and TJ Hawkinson at my top 2.
I like that. TJ with the revenge game against Detroit.
Yep. And
hmm
Detroit just gives up a ton. That should be a really fun game.
Hey, Detroit, another 30-plus point game. Got to point
Man,
that
they
out.
are crazy good. And
Yep.
the difficulty with Mark Andrews is that now we have Tyler Huntley at quarterback. He did have a big game with Huntley behind center. So all is not lost for Mark Andrews. It's just I have more confidence right now in that game script that Minnesota and Detroit have, uh, based on what I've seen out of Baltimore lately.
hmm
Now you're still going to start Mark Andrews, no question.
Yep.
I'll run through these real quick.
Sure.
Dalton Schultz versus Houston, Pat Freiermuth versus Baltimore, George Kittle versus Tampa Bay with a backup quarterback. That's why
You
I
just
have
can't. You
him.
just can't sit George Kittle. It doesn't matter.
You can't just.
No,
I agree. You can't. Absolutely not. Gerald Everett versus Miami. Greg Dulcich, who against Kansas City, who saw
I
a big
like that.
uptick when Cortland Sutton went down.
I like that.
Dawson Knox, Foster Moreau, Evan Ingram, Noah Fant. And I kind of low-key like Evan Ingram, Noah Fant over Knox and Moreau. Should I be swapping those out, or did I miss anyone that belongs in the top 12?
I mean, you know which one's a sitting duck for me.
And Knox. You hate
Yeah,
Knox.
of course.
Yeah. I mean, last week, Mac, Taysom Hill was the number 1 tight end. Does he deserve to be in the top 12?
No, because you never know when it's going to come, and there's not enough stability to warrant the highs because the lows are so much more frequent than other
Oh, and I think
players.
they're on bye now that I think about that. The
The
Saints are on
Saints,
bye.
the Saints are on bye, and that
Yeah.
that brings up a good point. Is as we've talked about for a couple weeks now, there are 6 teams on bye this week. The Packers, Colts, Saints, Falcons, Bears, and Commanders. Huge week for your fantasy teams. Look at the running back position. No Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon. No David Montgomery. No Jonathan Taylor. No Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. No Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. No Cordero Patterson. If you've been like in a deeper league with Tyler Algier, like no one. Like the running back position alone, you feel a little bit decimated. So it's going to be a rough week for some people.
Now, who do you like better, Evan Ingram or Noah Fant?
What do you have Evan Ingram ranked as?
11 right now at
And what do you have
Tennessee.
Dawson Knox?
9.
Yeah, I like Evan Ingram
Yeah.
ahead of Dawson Knox.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Evan Ingram, they play the Titans.
Yes.
popping this banner up on the screen. Dawson Knox plays the Jets. Evan Ingram plays the Titans. Like, Dawson Knox hasn't done enough for me to warrant
Oh yeah, totally.
even a start the last handful of weeks since he came back from injury. And yeah, you're hoping for him to get in the end zone, which is always the play. The New York Jets are I saw this the other day, the best strength adjusted defense in the league. Like, they are giving up the third fewest to wide receivers and quarterbacks. I don't know about the tight end position, but when you look at strength adjust or schedule adjusted, they're giving up the least. Like, they are so stingy. And Evan Ingram has been a focal point for Trevor Lawrence. Now, I don't know if we're going to have Trevor Lawrence or not, and that's one thing we got to keep an eye on.
I didn't actually see the replay.
It was awful.
Back,
it looked terrible.
Everyone on social media I saw the reaction, but I didn't see the video. Even like the doctor, the fantasy doctor dude that I can't stand.
Your number one subscriber, yeah.
Yeah, he had to delete his tweet because he went off and said, "Oh, he's done for the year. He's like season ender. He might not even be back next year." I don't know. He had to repent here and just.
I mean, his upper body went one direction towards the ground. His knee kind of stayed up, and it was just like, oh,
yeah.
Did he just tear his ACL or MCL? Like, that's immediately what I thought. And then he's just fine. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some sort of sprain there. I mean, if not, he's made of like literal
rubber.
Yeah, like silly putty. But if he's playing, I mean, even better for Evan Ingram. But I still like Evan Ingram here over Dawson Knox.
Yeah.
I would bump Evan Ingram up.
So you know what? I bumped Dawson Knox right out of my top 12, and I put Hunter Henry in there at Arizona.
Ooh.
That is a really good matchup. Arizona gives up some of the most to tight ends, and your mention of the Jets kind of sparked that into me saying, well, you know what? The best against tight ends, or the worst, however you want to put it, is Arizona. So Hunter Henry vaults up into the top 12. I think you could probably add him off of waivers even and have him be a spot start if you are in a tough spot with all the bye weeks.
Yeah, Arizona, the absolute worst.
Yeah.
At defending a lot of things passing.
Yeah.
So no, I like that change. It's a good change for us. I think Dawson Knox, like, does he have the ability to catch a touchdown? Absolutely. And the Bills make lots of trips to the red zone. That Jets defense at this point in the season is no joke, and we gotta kind of honor that a little bit.
And it's going to be a really good game this past. And the Jets beat the Bills, right? Last time they played.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be heck of a game. Bills are going to want to get one back on.
That was week 8, I believe. I think that's the week that I was in Detroit watching the Packers play.
Right.
And I was like, oh, what? The Jets beat the Bills? Like, I kind of heard it through whisperings in the stadium. It's kind of crazy.
And now with Mike White at quarterback, different quarterback should be interesting.
Better than Zach Wilson, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the running back position, the position that everyone really comes for. And
of course,
there are some interesting pieces. I love DeAndre Swift this week. I put him in my top 10. Spoiler alert. He has surpassed Jamal Williams. These are half PPR rankings, by the way. So each week, which for good reason, we've had Jamal Williams ahead of Swift, but I do think this is the time the Minnesota gives up a ton to the pass catching running back. And
well, let's park here for just a second. I know it's not our debate, but I did want to bring it up. Yeah. This is the first time that DeAndre Swift has seen more than 34% of snaps since week 8. So I mean, snap shares of 16, 31, 31, 34. We kind of both said to each other at the beginning of the live stream Sunday, this felt like the week that DeAndre Swift got a boosted workload, but there was no evidence of that anywhere.
Yeah.
But you looked at the week before, it's like, hey, he had an 8 target game. He had, 5 touches. His snap share went up just a little bit. It just kind of felt like he looked good. He was getting used a little bit more. His opportunities rose. And there it was, 14 attempts on the ground, 6 targets through the air, 20 total opportunities for over 100 yards and a touchdown, running back 5 on the week. It was like, was this just a fluke, or did what we actually think was coming came, and now we're back? Like, I don't know where to consolidate from here, but it feels like if you have DeAndre Swift, you've got to put him in your lineup, especially going up against Minnesota.
Agreed. I don't think it was a fluke. I don't think this reverts back to that 36%
Yeah,
snap share that we saw before. Jamal Williams owns the goal line. We know that. You can still start
sure.
Jamal Williams. He's probably going to get 1 or 2 touchdowns because that's just how it goes. But I
But
think this is the time for DeAndre Swift to be involved.
But there was an adverse effect on Jamal Williams. It's not like they were running 2 back sets. Jamal Williams fell from, 50% target or snap share down to 30. Like, he saw
Yeah.
a pretty notable decrease.
Hmm.
He still was the RB26. Like, he got into the end zone, had 11 attempts on the ground, but all the pass catching work was DeAndre Swift, which is why we love him for fantasy.
Detroit has an outside chance to get in the playoffs still,
I
and
know.
they won the game, and DeAndre Swift got the work. That's why I think it's a trend, not just a fluke.
Yep.
Um, he looks healthy finally. It's all things pointed up for DeAndre Swift. So if you've been sitting on the bench, if you need him to help you win a matchup, I think he can absolutely do it. Um, I'll go through my top 10 really quick. There's no real surprises here.
Okay.
Eckler, Henry, McCaffrey, Jacobs, Chubb, Dalvin Cook, Tony Pollard is in my top is
No
number 7.
surprises, eh? No
Yeah.
surprises. Okay.
Well, against Houston.
I know. Hey, I get it.
Again, I have him right in
Do you have
front
Zeke in
of
there too?
Ramondre Stevenson, Saquon Barkley, Swift, and then Zeke I put at number 11.
Okay.
So 2 top 12 running backs, and it's because of that Houston matchup.
Sure.
Is where I have it. I put Joe Mixon as a placeholder at number 12. We don't know if he's going to pass concussion protocol. It's a good matchup against Cleveland. I think if he plays, you should have the confidence to start him. I think they're going to go right back to him. Samaje Perine has been very good, but Joe Mixon's their starter.
Well, that was going to be my question: is if Joe Mixon is back, does he warrant the top 12 ranking?
It's a tough one. I'm not sure because behind that there are good running backs with more difficult matchups.
Hmm.
I don't have a ton of confidence in James Conner versus New England. Tough matchup.
No.
We have, Najee Harris.
Has this
All the good
podcast
running
ranked?
backs are on bye. Jeff Wilson had
I
nothing,
know.
even though against the Chargers is a great matchup. Rashad White against San Francisco, don't love that.
Hmm.
Miles Sanders, yes, he's okay, but it's a tough New York Giants defense. It's a weird week because of all the people on bye.
No, it is. The only one that I would consider talking about would be Miles Sanders.
Do you think he deserves to be higher?
Kind of. You have him at, what is it?
15.
15. Yeah, like, would I start Miles Sanders over Jamal Williams? I would.
Okay.
Would I start him over Travis Etienne? I think I would.
All right.
I don't know,
Is Zeke too high?
like, to have Pollard and Zeke inside the top 12 is not far-fetched given the running backs they're on bye this week, as well as just how soft that matchup is. Um, who knows if Joe Mixon returns to a full workload given what Samaje was able to do last week. So they could run some 2 back sets there or swap them in and out. Like, I'm good with your top 10, honestly. Like, I think DeAndre warrants that spot now. I just think Miles Sanders should be ahead of Jamal Williams, who's technically a secondary back now with touchdown upside. And then Travis Etienne is just a little bit banged up. Like, you can't move Connor up higher or Pacheco or Harris because of their matchups. New England, Denver, Baltimore, all gross. Same with Damian Pierce.
Pierce is a terrible matchup against
Terrible
Dallas.
matchup as well. Like, I think the one that only makes sense here is to have Miles Sanders ahead.
All right. So I put Miles Sanders at 13 now. I moved Travis Etienne down. and I could put him ahead of Jamal Williams if you think that is correct. But I basically swapped spots with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, no, I think that one I think that one makes a lot of sense. Like Philly's got a good matchup here against the Giants. Should be a competitive game. I hope. Travis Etienne, I don't have any issues with going up against Tennessee, but I worry about his health just a little bit.
You have to be a little hesitant. I know if you probably have ETN, you're likely going to start him, especially with all the buys, but we're going to temper expectations. He hasn't been as good as he has been early in the season since that injury.
Well, right. Week 12 against the Baltimore Ravens went down early with a foot injury, which was why he missed time in the first place. Had a Lisfranc fracture, had surgery on it, missed his entire rookie season. Has come back, been fantastic. Ever since they shipped James Robinson out of town, it's been the Travis Etienne show and more.
Mm-hmm.
But 13 attempts last week, 3 receptions. Didn't really look himself in a game script where it just kind of felt like he should have smashed against Detroit.
Yeah.
88% of snaps just wasn't effective. So I'm a little bit concerned about him. Miles Sanders, though, I am not concerned with at all. I'm not concerned about this Philly offense. It feels like they can just do what they want with the football on offense.
Yeah. You're
And
not wrong.
Miles Sanders is quietly the running back 13 on the year. Like, this is a guy that deserves to be in your lineup at this point in the season.
The Jaguars' schedule is pretty terrible. Tennessee, Dallas, the Jets the next 3 weeks. So
Yikes.
week 17 against Houston, if you can make it there with
Yeah.
ETN, that is
Yeah.
great. But it might, if you have to rely on ETN the next 3 weeks, you might be in a tough spot.
Fair.
Let's go into the wide receiver position. Justin Jefferson at the top
We're going
against
to have to change that. That's crazy.
yeah, huge debate.
Against
Jefferson
Detroit.
or Devontae Adams. Down Devontae Adams, number 2.
That man is outrageous.
He's the current number 1 wide receiver on the year.
It feels like every other week he has like a 35 plus point performance.
Oh, it's not even fair.
And it's just like, how does he get that open? Who is
He-
allowing this to happen? These
he
are
makes
professionals.
moves on players that I haven't seen. Like
I
that
mean,
shouldn't even be allowed on TV. That's so nasty.
the one that he who did he dump 2 weeks ago? Oh man, it was in overtime too. He dumped his man in the middle of the field on like a double move, and it was just like, excuse me?
Yeah.
How did that happen? I'm gonna go back and look because it escapes me right now. It was against the Seahawks in overtime. Devontae scored the walk-off touchdown. No, that was Josh Jacobs, sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah.
When?
Well,
Maybe it was
they took turns walk off overtime touchdowns.
No, it was against the Denver Broncos. That was an overtime game as well. I
Right.
believe it was Patrick Surtain that he just
Oh,
absolutely dusted, but he scored the game winner. It was like in the right corner of the end zone. But either way, yeah, he does some silly things, man.
averaging over 22 fantasy points per game. Last year, he averaged 21 and a half fantasy points per game. He has more touchdowns on the season this year than he did all of last year.
I mean, that's what happens when you go from Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh man. We were all too low on Devontae Adams.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tyreek Hill at the Chargers, really, really good matchup.
Warranted.
Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Minnesota,
Love it.
phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Jamar Chase versus Cleveland, great. The only tough matchup, I mean, the Stephon Diggs at the New York Jets could be.
I'm okay with that one though.
Sauce Gardner, I mean, he's good, but you're right. I mean, you're not gonna.
This is Stephon Diggs we're talking about.
This is Stephon Diggs you're talking about. AJ Brown at the these. We should be just drafting wide receivers, Mac. What are we doing even drafting running backs at this point? These guys are so good.
Yeah.
AJ Brown at the Giants. CeeDee Lamb versus Houston. That one could be tricky.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb should be probably higher. He should probably be ahead of Stephon Diggs and AJ Brown.
they don't need to pass the football. They're just
I
gonna.
understand that. I understand it.
That's the crazy part about Houston is that anyone could do anything they want against Houston. They just don't need to.
Yeah,
Like, oh
fair enough.
gosh. So I've got T. Higgins. So two Bengals are in my top 10 again.
It's
T.
impressive.
Higgins has been good. Hopefully that game is as good as we hope it is. DK Metcalf at Carolina, another phenomenal matchup.
I owe DK Metcalf an apology. You talked to him in the start sit segment about his safety and reliability, and I was just like, I don't know if he's been that great. I watched most of that game. Dude just gets open.
It's like sometimes Geno Smith forgets how dominant DK is.
Yeah, he'll just like kind of go through spurts where like this drive, it's just a Tyler Lockett drive, or the 2-minute drill is just all Tyler Lockett. And those are just the plays you see on red zone, and you're just like, damn, look at Tyler Lockett. And you forget that DK Metcalf has like 8 receptions already. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
damn.
8 for 8, 127 and touchdown.
Yeah.
They could throw at him every single play and he doesn't lose very often.
They could. You're probably right.
Keenan Allen, I have versus Miami. I think that could be a very good high over-under game. And then we have some tougher matchups and question marks at quarterback. So here's where the real debate starts.
Okay.
DeAndre Hopkins versus New England. Tough matchup, but he's still DeAndre. Then we have Amari Cooper at Cincinnati with Deshaun Watson, who seems to throw at his feet the entire game.
Yep.
Jalen Waddle, placeholder, he's hurt. If he plays, I think he's a great start.
Yep.
It's just there's high risk there. It's still early in the week, guys. We're not sure the status of him. Kirk at Tennessee. I think this is just like I disrespect Christian Kirk every single week, and I just need to put him where he should be.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think Christian Kirk needs to be bumped up ahead of Amari Cooper.
Right. Okay.
And Amari Cooper needs to fall a tier.
Okay.
I'm okay with like Tyler Lockett coming up into that tier. And tough to have Chris Godwin and Deebo Samuel down in here. I understand why they're there.
For me, it's the question mark at quarterback for San Francisco. And then really just a tough matchup. Like I mentioned earlier, the pass rush for San Francisco, I think could
I still think the volume is going to be there with Chris Godwin. That's my only
he's the
point of
short yardage
contention.
guy. He's the short yardage guy, But does he deserve to be in front or behind of Tyler Lockett?
Probably behind.
Okay.
I think Jalen Waddle, if you're gonna pop an injury designation on him, should probably fall to where Chris Godwin is right now. You swap Waddle and Godwin.
All right, that's what.
At the end of the day, like what I've preached all year with Chris Godwin is like, yeah, he's not gonna win you matchups per se, but he could if the volume is great. Like we saw that 12 reception, 110 yards and a touchdown game. Like he won you a week there.
Yeah.
In a full PPR league, his volume is so good that he has enough to give you a really high baseline, and on a good volume day can win you a matchup. So.
Yep. No, I like that. I think in a full PPR, half PPR league, Godwin is very safe, and he's a short yardage guy. If they do have pressure on Tom Brady, he goes to Godwin so much. He might not be a. That's why Mike
and
Evans,
Godwin last night was the target of many double teams over the middle. It's like both linebackers fell into coverage and then just took away any slant or crosser over the middle. It was like, no, Chris Godwin's not an option. You got to force it out to Scotty Miller. You got to hit K. Dotton in the flat. Like you had to use other guys.
Did you see that Mark Ingram apologized for running out of bounds too early? That cost them the game. I guess you stopped watching. So it was a crazy play where Mark Ingram should have went out because he was hurt. He stayed in the game. They ran the football. He had a clear path to the right. Looks like he had an easy first down, and he stepped out a yard short.
Oh.
And they couldn't get the first down. Like I think it might have been first and 10, and he got 9 yards, and then they couldn't pick up that extra yard, or second and 10, whatever it was. They could never get back that 1 yard, and they cost them the game.
That's wild. Tough.
Yeah. Okay. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith. What do you do with these two guys? Tough matchup. Garrett
Mm-hmm.
Wilson looked elite, but that's also against the Vikings.
Yeah.
And Devontae Smith had a really good first quarter and a half, and then really didn't do much, but they didn't really have to. It was the AJ Brown revenge show for the rest of the game. Are these guys just? It's hard to get them right each week in and week out.
The thing with Devontae Smith is that he'll have one of these blow up games, and you're like, oh, this is why I drafted him this year. This is why I doubled down on the
Second year, yep.
sophomore wide receiver, right? Like we kind of did some of the math and the proof was in the pudding, and then he just disappears and you're like, why does this guy just like go away? I don't understand. Evidently week 3, 12 for 169 and a touchdown. The next week 3 for 17. Like 26.9 fantasy points to 3. Then you're like, okay, cool. Week 5, he has 11 targets, 10 receptions, 87 yards. He's the wide receiver 16. You're like, okay, awesome. Next week, 5 targets. You're like, all right, I don't really understand. Then we see it again. Week 11 against Indy. He goes 9 targets, 6 receptions, 78 yards. You're like, cool. He's getting back in the mix. Then follows it up with 4 for 50. Like, it's not that they're worlds apart, but it's like this guy is, a guy who can win me my week on a hot one, or he's just not even a part of the game plan. It's like the AJ Brown show, or it's Devontae Smith. I guess the lows aren't enough to sit him, but it feels like with Garrett Wilson and Mike White, there's a noticeable split. Like Garrett Wilson with either Joe Flacco or Mike White, basically anybody not named Zach Wilson, has been very good for fantasy.
Yeah.
15 targets this last week.
Oh, it was incredible.
15 for 162. Like coming back, 2 back-to-back top 10 finishes. The week before, 8 for 95 and 2 touchdowns against Chicago, against Minnesota. They play Buffalo, totally different, but that secondary in Buffalo has been a little bit beat up.
Yep.
I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver this week. I'm just saying that with Mike White, the attention seems to be all on Garrett Wilson, as it probably should be.
Yeah. We're going to get to listener questions very shortly, but I do need to talk about Mike Evans. I did a video on him last night. Everyone's been very disappointing. He hasn't had a touchdown for many weeks. We mentioned earlier that the pressure is likely going to get to Tom Brady. His offensive line isn't protecting him, and Mike Evans is the deep threat guy. Does he even belong in this top 21, 24 players, or should you just bench Mike Evans and grab a good waiver wire ad?
I mean, it seems tough to go that route. The only reason I say that, yes, he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 4. But Mike Evans since week 4, games of 8, 15, 11, 11, 9 targets. His low is 4 targets, week 6 and this past week, but 4 for 59 yards.
Not bad. Yeah. It's 15 yards a reception.
The reason why we've loved having Mike Evans on our fantasy teams the last couple of years is because he's had 14 and 13 touchdown seasons. It's been a different Bucs team this year. They have struggled. Their defense has not been as good, and their time of possession is not what it once was. And this is a team who was able to run the football on the ground and pick up third downs with Tom Brady and, an elite offensive line that could pass block for him. A lot of things have changed. They can't run the football as well as they have been. Chris Godwin was slow to start the year. Mike Evans has not really been the deep ball threat that he's been, and Tom Brady's just looked a little bit off. I'm not willing to give up on Mike Evans because the volume is there. I do understand 4 targets on 54 attempts is not the target share that you want.
Yeah.
But 4 for 59 doesn't hurt you. Like 8 fantasy points and a half PPR, you're not going home crying like I lost my week because I started Mike Evans.
Right.
That's true if you started Randall Cobb, who had a 0,
That's true. That's true.
you know,
Or Cortland Sutton, who
or
put up a
Cortland
0
Sutton,
as
who
well.
just the Denver Broncos are outrageous. I'm not willing to sit down Mike Evans. I
Yep.
understand the matchup is not good. Is he worthy of a top 24 spot in your rankings? I think we could debate that further. I'm okay if you were to fade him a little bit and, have this cold streak continue. At some point, it has to stop. There's no way I'm sitting Mike Evans down in week 16 against the Arizona Cardinals or week
Oh,
17
yeah,
against the Carolina Panthers. Like, there's
absolutely.
zero chance that's happening.
One thing I will say with a backup quarterback for San Francisco, that should give some more opportunities to the Bucks to get the ball more, right? Like that, the
Yeah.
Bucks defense should be able to turn the ball over, force 3-and-outs. They should have more opportunities to score this week than maybe with with Jimmy G at quarterback.
Yep.
My kind of surprise top 24 wide receiver is going to be Jerry Jeudy. I'm expecting Cortland Sutton to miss. I think Jerry Jeudy should see an uptick in targets. I think he's kind of a sneaky little start this week. That could change by the time kickoff actually happens. He only commanded 4 targets this past week. Don't really care. I think against Kansas City, they're going to need him.
He was early on those targets. He was like four targets in the first half and then really wasn't targeted again.
And that was
But
it.
I had a couple messages armed and ready to go because I could not trade him for the life of me in our Dynasty Addicts League because people said, oh, he was washed. I don't want anything to do with the Broncos. But when he was I think he was like 4 for 50 to start the game, like the first half.
Well, he finished 4 for 65, so that would have been what he had.
Maybe he was 3 for 49. Either
Right.
way, I had it armed and ready. Like, oh, if Jerry Jeudy comes back and just busts a 100-yard game, I'm just gonna be, wow, Jerry Jeudy is so bad. No wonder I couldn't trade him.
Yeah, like what happened with Joe Mixon early this year.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting on that $100.
I thought it was gonna be like 100 like yen or something is what he
Yeah,
was
of
gonna give you.
course, of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
All right, Mac. Before we get to a couple questions here in the comments, do you have any must add players this week? DJ Dallas should be a speculative add in case. I mean, he got hurt. He got banged up too this past week as well. I don't know who the Seahawks are going to play at running back. It could be him. It's possible that Ken Walker actually plays.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure. The top of the list for most people are going to be James Cook, Zonovan Knight, maybe
Sure.
Cam Akers if he's available in some leagues. I think this is a week to start handcuffing as well. So Alexander Madison, if he's on your waiver wire, and you're a Dalvin Cook owner, you should be handcuffing right now. Adding the Jahan Dotsons of the world, I think we're past that point, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, like Zonovan Knight is a name that if you didn't grab him last week, you might have missed out. His roster percentage is over 54% in sleeper leagues, but 15 attempts with 5 carries, a total of 5 targets, 5 receptions.
Yep.
20 total opportunities for 118 yards. I mean, that's exactly what you want to see. I know the matchup against Buffalo is not great, but after that, Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle to end the year, the Jets have a really nice playoff schedule. I think that's someone that if you missed out last week, now's the time to spend up and grab him because it doesn't look like Michael Carter's coming back anytime soon. James Cook, I do echo that sentiment. You should probably grab him. And then DJ Dallas, I think, is worth a speculative add, especially if you're the Kenneth Walker owner. In your Superflex or 2 QB leagues, Tyler Huntley is a must add. Lamar Jackson could be out for a couple weeks, and Huntley's been decent as a fantasy asset when given a start. Brock Purdy is one I'm hands off on. I'm not looking to add him.
Tough matchup as well against
the
agreed. Bucks.
Yep.
The number one kind of tight end add and start, I think Dulcich, he's in my top 10. I mean, Evan Ingram qualifies as well. Foster Moreau if he's available, and Hunter Henry. All these guys are probably maybe available on your waiver wire. Their spot starts. Tight
I
end is so bad.
I'm going to reiterate this. The one defense I'm adding for the
Oh, yes.
remainder of the year are the Kansas City Chiefs. If they are available on your waiver wire, they probably are after playing the Cincinnati Bengals. People didn't want that smoke, but
Mm-hmm.
now they have the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Denver Broncos again. Very, very, very strong schedule for them. They should be able to
I love that. I have a
be solid for
claim
you.
in one league,
Yeah.
not a league that you're in, but I really do want the Chiefs as well. That Houston matchup next week is so
To
juicy.
Denver, a Houston.
Mm,
Seattle's the only matchup where you're like, could
yeah,
get away from them. But I mean, if I have to just pick up a defense to spot start in week 16, that's fine. But those are problems you cross the bridge when you get there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I brought up Pittsburgh last week. Now with Baltimore, backup quarterback, seems really nice, and then Carolina in week 15
Mm-hmm.
is also a really good spot. They have
Agreed.
Baltimore, sorry, twice to finish the year. All right,
Cool. Let's
let's
get to
get.
some fantasy questions here to end the stream.
Yep.
We got about 14 minutes left. We got Yeetman 143. Who do you like more, Waddle or CeeDee Lamb rest of season?
It feels like I like CD Lamb is where I want to go. Is that crazy? The way how good Waddles has been.
Waddle's been great. There are some injury, I guess, concerns with him or re-injury. And Tyreek Hill's been one of the best wide receivers in football. CeeDee Lamb quietly the wide receiver 7. It
Yeah,
feels like he hasn't had any like massive breakout games. Only 200 plus touchdown, or sorry, 100 plus receiving games. Only has 6 touchdowns on the year so far through 13 weeks. But just quietly going about his business. Houston, Jacksonville, Philly, Tennessee to end the year. Really nice schedule. I like CeeDee Lamb with how this Dallas offense is chugging right now. You look at how many points they've scored the last couple weeks, 40 plus in their last 2. What's not to like about Dallas right now? I think they're super strong.
yeah, I agree. CD Lamb it is.
We got Lex in the chat. Hey guys, would you drop Madison, Dobbins, or Jamison Williams for a QB backup for Lamar? So I guess Tyler Huntley is what we're looking for, or another option.
Yeah, or streamer like Jared Goff. I
Jared
think is a
Goff.
really good ad this
Mm-hmm.
week. I would drop Jameson Williams if you're not in a keeper league, triple
Yep.
X. Um, Yeah, I would. I want to keep stashing Madison and Dobbins, where running backs are so valuable right now. There's only one target for Jameson Williams this past week. He's going to take time to get to be that elite prospect that he once was. At this point, he's still just a prospect. I don't think you can trust him with uh, any
No.
confidence.
No, he's going to get probably a majority of his reps on special teams. Like Landon said, 1 target, 11% snap share. He's just not a part of the offense right now.
They don't need him either. They've got some great
No,
options. DJ Chark looks pretty good. I mean, Amon Ra, the Sun God, is just elite. And then Swift is back healthy, so he's a good target out of the backfield, like we mentioned earlier.
agreed. Millie C asks, pick 3, Najee, Wilson, Pierce, or Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Oh, so
I think I'm willing to just start all 3 running backs there and sit DPJ.
I think so too. The question mark Millie at quarterback. We spoke about it that he's got upside, but Donovan Peoples-Jones had a punt return for a touchdown last week, so that would have saved your week if that counted
Big
for
time.
your team. But besides that, I don't. My memory serves he did not have a great game. Besides that,
No, I mean, tough for anybody to have a good game when Deshaun just wasn't able to facilitate the ball when given opportunities.
yeah, exactly.
Ali Ramirez, if you're in the chat, feel free to pop your question, and Lando and I will be here for about the next, 5 to 10 minutes or so. So feel free to put those in the chat. But I'm interested to see how waivers go through. I'm in a couple dynasty leagues where I've lost Lamar Jackson. I really haven't even looked at what the waiver wire looks like. I have Tom Brady as my secondary QB.
Right.
That doesn't feel great going up against San Francisco, but it's kind of all I have.
Yeah.
My trade deadline is next week, or this week, I should say. It's like the
Oh,
end of the regular season. Should I be looking to facilitate a trade? That's the kind of the question I have.
if you have secured your playoff spot, I think you're
I
fine.
have
I think if you could get like a Jared Goff for
no.
relatively cheap, I think that wouldn't be a
Oh,
bad
for cheap.
target.
Gotcha. Tyler Huntley's available. If I
Right.
wanted to, is Tyler Huntley a better option than Tom Brady? Is the question.
Yeah, that's a close one. I would probably just blow all your fab on Huntley just to get him and just to have the opportunity
Yeah,
to make that decision.
sure.
I want to
Pittsburgh's
say
not the greatest matchup.
no, it's not. If I would have started Tyler Huntley last year in our country clubbers playoffs, I would have won my
Yes.
matchup and continued on. I don't know if I would have won the actual championship,
Right.
but I would have made it one step further. So he's going to run the football. He's going to be, um, he's he's going to score fantasy points for you. He's got a very safe floor, even though it's a tough matchup.
I know that's kind of where I'm at with him, but yeah, it's not a great position to be in, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think we can wrap things up now. Good
Yep.
luck, everyone, in week 14. Hopefully, you don't need this week. Hopefully, none of your players get injured. Let me know in the comments if you're still watching. If you have some tough starts and decisions, we'll get back to you and give you the best advice I can to help you win your matchup and hopefully a fantasy title. Thank you for tuning in live. Make sure to like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. We got one more question before we go. Millie, you were so close
So close.
to not getting it answered. Stacking Prescott, Lamb, Schultz, wise play, or go for Gallup. That's a good play. I think
No,
you
is it
can.
is it wise to go and get Gallup as well if you're stacking Prescott, Lamb, and Schultz?
I think Gallup is a very fine ad. We heard today that Dallas is concerned with OBJ's ACL recovery and whether it's actually um, ready to play in the NFL. So I think Gallup still has some value. He did get the touchdowns. That's what he really
Mm-hmm.
he besides those touchdowns. I don't think he was that good if my memory serves. Um,
Um, I I think I'm gonna just jump in and say if you have Prescott, Lamb, Schultz, I'm not willing to get a fourth in the mix. I think
right,
that's just too much exposure.
and
Even though the schedule is fantastic, I just think it's too much exposure
if you if you're
to
gonna
one team.
if you're gonna quad stack like that, you want a game against Kansas City. You want a game against one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. Against Houston, it's not going to do that. You're not going to get those points. They don't need all those players, unfortunately.
Well, I mean they've kept the pedal to the metal unrighteously, I guess you could say, the last like couple weeks, but
Yeah,
I'm just it's too much exposure for me because yeah, what happens if the game script goes like you're saying where it's a run heavy game. Mike McCarthy learns his lesson because Jerry just slaps him on the back of the wrist and says no more of that. No more 56-point outings. Like we're running the clock. We're getting off the field with our win.
because how many points do the Cowboys defense score against Houston? Like
Yeah, like that we don't know.
like they probably one. I bet you they score one touchdown at least. Like the over under.
I'm great with stacking Prescott, Lamb, Schultz. I think that's solid. Lamb's a top 10 option. So is Schultz at his position, and
Hmm.
Prescott's been solid. So
Yeah,
I like that. But I think when you throw in Gallup, it's like, well, man, I could go flex Garrett Wilson instead, you know,
yeah,
or whoever you would be flexing. I throw out Garrett Wilson because he's
sure,
somebody you
yeah,
drafted in the upper single digit, low double digit rounds.
yeah.
And I think there's just more upside. Like you're just betting on the whole offense at that point. At some point it tapers off. So
Yeah. And Miller's saying against the Eagles, it should be a good matchup. It could be a high scoring game for sure. Both
again, I'm not
defenses are elite. It
I'm
could be
not going out to play those four though if
yeah.
I have better options. I
Yeah.
think is
All
where I'm
right.
at.
Make sure to come back on Sunday. We will be live an hour and a half before kickoff. So if you do have last minute start sits, get us on there. Mac and I, hopefully he'll have a camera next time and you can
Yeah, I
see
will.
his pretty little face.
Don't you worry.
and we'll be back. So thanks a lot. Don't forget to subscribe. We're Snap _Fantasy on Instagram and Twitter, and we will